Much, Russ. The Body Worlds exhibition is here until May 1st. You can find ticket details on our website. Well, we all have a favorite restaurant, right? And for decades, Anderson's on Elizabeth Avenue was the place to be in Charlotte. For 60 years, the family-run restaurant was a favorite among well-known city leaders and politicians before it closed in 2006. While the restaurant isn't open anymore, Anderson's is still very much in business. Carolina Impact's Jason Terzis brings us its story.
Charlotte's new CityLinks Gold Line is a throwback to the streetcars of yesteryear. Some might say it's only fitting it passes right by a former Queen City landmark. What's now Viva Chicken on Elizabeth Avenue was for 60 years Anderson's restaurant. Jimmy Anderson and his brothers opened the sandwich shop in 1946. Wanting a signature dessert, Jimmy began selling his pecan pie and labeled it the world's best.
He knew that he wanted people to remember the restaurant, and he needed to find something that they could identify with the restaurant. And that's kind of where the world's best pecan pie came from.
Gary Anderson started working at his dad's restaurant as a kid, bussing tables and talking with customers. He grew up with the place. He says it was the ultimate family restaurant.
I think that was the key. It was just a comfortable place like being home. We had customers that would get up and get their own coffee. They would come in the kitchen and get food if they needed it. They would pour coffee for other customers when we were busy. I think people just felt comfortable in here.
With its close proximity to Presbyterian Hospital and uptown, Anderson's became a who's who of regulars, from local business leaders to local politicians. Doing the cooking in those days was Anthony Jones. He's been with Anderson's for 36 years. Starting as a busboy, he worked his way into the kitchen and has been cooking ever since.
I learned from a lot of different cooks here, and I used to watch everybody do things, and then I watched them do something that looked so great, and I just come by and be nosy and, say, well, this looks good, and I tried it, and they come out pretty good a couple of times. They were a little bit off, but I worked it out.
After finishing college, Gary went to work with his father, learning all the ins and outs of the business. Jimmy had worked 7 days a week most of his life, but in 1983, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and died in 1988. A few years later, Gary's grandfather was also on his deathbed. He left his grandson with some lasting words.
One thing that he said to me was, in his very heavy Greek accent, and he said, he said, your dad used to talk about traveling and doing all these things, and he never got to do it. He goes, don't make that same mistake. He goes, life's too short. And he said, one day you're going to get married, you're going to have a family. He says, don't cheat your family.
The catering side of Anderson's began in the early 90s, and it started by accident. A friend who worked as a drug rep was supposed to bring food to a meeting at the hospital. He forgot and quickly called Gary.
Called me up and he goes, hey man, that was great. Can you do another one for me? And that's kind of how we got into the catering business, by accident.
It wasn't until Gary got married and started a family that his grandfather's words came back to him. He first started closing the restaurant on Sundays, then Saturday nights. And after thinking it over for 3 years, the final decision, to close Anderson's restaurant permanently in 2006 after 60 years in business.
The hardest part of the decision was we did have a great customer base, and I loved the interaction that I had with people that came in here, and they were family.
Closing the restaurant allowed more time with family. It also allowed Gary to focus on the catering side of the business. Working out of the back part of the old restaurant, Chef Anthony still serves up everything on the original Anderson's menu. Fried chicken, barbecue chicken, mac and cheese, broccoli casserole, the list goes on. And what would Anderson's be without pies? Banana pudding, coconut cream, and of course, the world's best pecan pie. What makes the pies the world's best?
I can't tell you that. Trade secret, right?
The pecan recipe hasn't changed since 1959. 10-inch, extra deep, made with pecan halves, not pieces, all made from scratch. And the only guy who makes them? Chef Anthony.
Pretty much now they are at perfection, and I'm proud to make them, I tell you, really.
While Anderson's has evolved over the last decade, one thing has not changed since it first opened 70 years ago.
The nice thing is that we really try to give good service, and we haven't changed how we do things. We still make everything from scratch. And it's about service and quality, and we continue to try to do that.
At 59, Gary hasn't slowed down a bit, and he has no desire to either. For Carolina Impact, I'm Jason Terzis reporting.
Thanks, Jason. Anderson's has specially made boxes for mail delivery. They've shipped their pies as far away as Alaska. By the way, Jason shared a couple of those pies with our staff. I didn't even get a slice. But I did kind of scrape the bottom out and had a little piece of the pecan, and it was pretty amazing. Everyone who had a slice said it was delicious. Well, you can find more about Anderson's on our website at pbscharlotte.org. Before we go, time is rapidly running out for